Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining us on our latest ride-along road trip. It's been a long time coming, but I finally managed to get you guys in the passenger seat of this Porsche 996 911. The 996 was produced between 1997 and 2004, and to say it was controversial would be an understatement. So what I'd like to do today, since the weather's nice and it's potentially one of the last opportunities of the year that I will get to get out in this car, I thought I would take you guys out on a short road trip, tell you a little bit about the history of this car and talk specifically about this car in particular. So, in the 90s, Porsche weren't doing quite so well as they are nowadays financially. Their business strategy of high value, low volume niche products wasn't a sustainable business practice for them in the long term, and they needed to change tact. So by the mid-90s, what they decided to do was adopt new mass manufacturing processes and assembly line processes similar to what Toyota had been refining since the 70s. And with that in mind, what they done is they redesigned this 911 from the ground up. The first time that the 911 had ever received a redesign ever since its inception in the 60s. So that meant that a whole new chassis, a whole new bodywork, some contentious design choices, and some even more frustrating to some engineering choices. Now, as mentioned, the 996 was released between 1997 and 2004, and during that point it came in two iterations, the 996.1 and then the 996.2. The 996.1 was available between 97 and 2000, and then the 996.2 was available throughout the remainder of the model's lifespan up until 2004, before the 997 came in. And the 996.1 has a 3.4 litre flat six engine producing around about 300 brake horsepower, and the 996.2, the revision, also came with an updated engine, which was a 3.6 litre engine that was increased around about 320 brake horsepower. Now, when I mentioned some of those contentious design cues, what Porsche needed to do was approach how they developed cars differently. They needed a new approach to how they were going to develop cars, and that's how they adopted the mass manufacturing processes of Toyota. It did mean that they had to potentially cut back a little bit on their quality. They had to ultimately find a way to produce cars cheaper, faster, and on a scale that they hadn't previously managed to do. So that meant that in some Porsche enthusiasts' eyes, the design decisions that they made with this car put them off because it was unrecognisable to them as a 911. And some of that frustration starts with the front of this car. This being a 996.1, it shares pretty much everything from the bulkhead forward with the 986 Boxster at the time. Now, as I mentioned, Porsche weren't as financially stable as they are nowadays, and they did put a lot of emphasis on this car in the 986, and they needed it to be popular. They needed both of these cars to be popular, and ultimately they were. This and the 986 are the cars that sold in unprecedented numbers on a scale that Porsche had never managed to manufacture cars on before, and it meant that these cars were far more mass marketable to everybody outside of Porsche circles. So that meant that with this car sharing some elements of the, as of then, brand new 986 Boxster, it meant that Porsche could be a little bit cheaper, or produce the car a little bit cheaper, because ultimately they were producing aspects for two cars rather than just one. However, along with that came an update to the 911's visuals, and that's the first point of contention amongst Porsche circles with the 996 911. They got rid of the iconic round highlights that had been on every single 911 up until that point, and replaced them with a more modern, unique shape that has affectionately over time been referred to as the fried egg. Because certainly on the earlier 986s and 911s, where the amber section of the indicator sat on this unique shaped headlight, made it look like a runny egg. It made it look like an egg whose yolk had bursted and fallen down to the bottom. And taking away that iconic look from Porsche ultimately put a lot of the die-hard Porsche enthusiasts off, because as I mentioned earlier, it meant that this car was unrecognisable to them. And I suppose the final nail in the coffin for the true enthusiasts was this was the first 911 that got rid of the air-cooled engine and replaced it with a water-cooled engine. To come into the modern era, the 21st century, Porsche not only needed to update their mass manufacturing process, but they also needed to update their engines to match emission regulations. Whilst it's not quite as strict as what it is nowadays, it was certainly a cause for concern for Porsche, and they had to essentially transplant what many considered to be the beating heart of the iconic 911, and that was the final straw for a lot of the diehards. But it did mean that this car was available to a lot more people. It had far bigger mass market appeal, and the success of this and the 986 fundamentally saved Porsche and brought them into the modern era. We wouldn't have cars like the modern GT3 RSs or even the Cayenne if this and the Boxster weren't as successful as they were. This particular car is a 1999 Carrera 4, so as I mentioned before, it means it shares a lot of the front end with the Porsche. It's a far softer looking car than the revised edition, which came with new updated headlights from the 996 Turbo, and that was really just to help differentiate the car from its what many consider to be its lesser brethren within the model range. And this being a Carrera 4 means that it has four-wheel drive. Some would argue that the purest driving experience one could get from a Porsche 911 would be a Carrera 2, and I would disagree. I live in Scotland, right, where the weather's not great. I don't have guarantees that I'm going to get weather like this frequently, so I need to make sure that when I do have this or the weather's bad, I have access to traction and grip should I need it. And I think certainly within Britain, that is a good mindset to have. Now obviously, a rear wheel drive is going to be more engaging. This offers more weight. It's just a little bit over, 1,300 kilograms. And yeah, it doesn't make much difference. Some would argue that the extra weight over the front axle sort of changes the driving dynamic ever so much, but I would disagree, because ultimately you've still got the big engine in the back, you've still got that sensation that there is giving you extra grip over the back end there when you're coming out of a corner. And some would say, because of the driving dynamics of the 911, what you should ideally be doing is going into corners slowly and using that extra weight over the back to give you extra grip to come out of the corners faster. And it's very much a driver's car, this car. It's the last of the cable throttle-bodied cars, so that means that basically there is a cable attaching my right foot to the engine, and it's just so unbelievably analog. Every slight change or increment that I make to that accelerator, I can feel the car responding to it. And whilst the naturally aspirated 3.4 litre engine that's in this is an absolute joy to listen to, I found it's really actually quite good at slow speeds in high gears. Now, if you are wanting to compare the takeoff of this car, it's around about 5 seconds. I think it's just over 5 seconds, not to 60. But if you compare that to modern cars, hell, if you even compare it to the BMW X5, anything with a turbo which is most things these days, is going to feel considerably faster than this. There's not an immediate response to this car. It's got a linear, gradual power increase that doesn't hit the sort of the peak power band until around about 4,000 RPM. So if you're in low revs in a high gear, you can get caught off guard and the car will do absolutely nothing. However, if you make sure that you're working the gears and you're in the right rev range for acceleration, this car would keep up with and embarrass even most modern cars these days. Certainly back in the day, Evo Car voted this as best car of 1998, which speaks volumes of the quality of the brand new 911 of the time. And it just really speaks of the characteristics of this car. This is a driver's car. I've owned some awesome cars in my past. I've had Mark 1 MX-5s, I've had Subaru Forester STIs and whatnot, but this car is just one of the ones that just inspire confidence. It's one of the ones that I just keep itching to get back out into, and partly this is why. Third gear, absolutely no fuss whatsoever, right up to 60 miles an hour. At no point does it feel concerning. It just is such an absolute joy to drive. And I'd like to make a brief case as to why I think you guys should go out and buy one of these. So if you've been on YouTube and you search 996 for any length of time, there are hundreds of videos out there saying, hey, go and buy a 996. It's possibly hit its lowest point as far as price goes, and the price has managed to remain low on these because of the fact that so many of them were sold. Certainly the volume of production of these far outweigh any of the prior 911 models as far as numbers are concerned. So it means that a lot of these are still on the road, and it means that there is more of a, or less, of a bespoke hand-crafted feel with this car, because again, those assembly line updates that Porsche had made to allow this car to be made quicker and cheaper. But it means that you can have an introduction into the Porsche world for less than £20,000. Hell, if you're willing to pick up a dog, you're potentially able to get in for anywhere between £10,000 to £12,000. And those cars are going to need a little bit of work, but from an entry point perspective, skip the Boxster, skip the Cayman, and get into what many petrol heads and Porsche enthusiasts would consider to be the best of the Porsche lineup, and that is the 911. Not only that, but these cars are surprisingly practical, and I don't mean in a luggage capacity kind of way. The frunk on this is slightly smaller, again, because it's a four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive model, so that drivetrain eats into the frunk ever so slightly. But I've had both kids and the wife in this car on a couple of day trips, and the last one that we went on, all three of them fell asleep. So I think that kind of speaks, again, volumes on how potentially comfortable and refined this car is. Now remember, it's 25 years old, so it's not going to be as refined or as comfortable as more modern cars. It is certainly, coming back to that analog description, you feel everything. It's very descriptive. The car is incredibly communicative on what it is doing and what it wants to do. And it's constantly communicating all of the bumps in the roads feedback through the steering wheel. And part of the reason why this video is taking so long is mainly due to the fact that the audio, I underestimated how much of a change the audio would go through. Now, when I was testing the modern cars like the X5 and the Citroen C4, the soundproofing on them was obviously much better than what was on this Porsche, because when I first done this video, and I've done it a few times now, the audio was picking up every single bump and crash, and the onboard mic of the camera just wasn't cutting it. So I had to basically go back to the drawing board, get myself a decent mic, and hopefully that has now solved the problem. because I really don't want to do this video again. I feel like I've done it so many times now. But this car, I can't honestly tell you enough how much I love driving this thing. It's a weekend toy for me. I don't use it as a daily driver, but if I wanted to, I could. I could easily look after this car and use it as a daily driver. Now, speaking of dogs, for around about 20,000 or for £10,000, this is not a dog. I spent just under £18,000 on this particular car, and going by the stack of paperwork that I have received with this car, it's a good one. It's certainly been looked after fastidiously by previous owners, and that's what you want when coming to buy one of these cars. If you are going to be looking at these cars, I recommend having a pre-purchase inspection done to make sure that there's no bore scoring on the left-hand cylinder in the engine, and I'd also make sure that there is documentation there to back up whether or not the IMS bearing has been updated. I would recommend going out and doing a thorough search. There's channels that go into far greater detail about these potential issues than what I'm going to do today, but I think that if you're going to be buying one of these, they're the main things that you want to be checking out on. Obviously, with a 25-year-old car, there's also things like suspension and brakes and whatnot that you want to make sure are all up to date and the components have been changed recently. Part of the reason why I bought this car, excluding the 2 car seats that I managed to throw in as part of the deal. Thank you, Brian. Shout out to the person who sold me the car. It had at least 18 to 20,000 pounds worth of maintenance over the last decade done to it. So that to me suggests that this car has been looked after and certainly no expense has been spared. And I'm hoping that what that's going to give me is at least a year or 2 of relatively pain-free driving where I can enjoy this car before I need to start putting mega bucks into it. So there are also things to consider when purchasing one of these cars, but I would definitely say, much like every other YouTube out there, if you have the means to do so, these cars are definitely an investment opportunity. They've depreciated beyond the point of their lowest point, and hopefully, like every other 911 before it, they will retain their value, and not only that, but they'll start to appreciate in value as more and more people come on to these cars. A lot of the younger generation, the generation that grew up with the 996 as their Porsche 911, they are getting into them, they're getting access and an introduction to Porsche, and they're not caring about the headlights, they're not caring that it's got a water-cooled engine, because they don't know anything better. And it means that this car is now starting to get the recognition that it deserves. Because as far as a true driver's car goes, a proper analog sports car, I don't think there's anything else out there that will give you this real raw feeling that a Porsche 911 will give you. And really, that's all I've got to say on the matter. If you're still watching this, thank you for joining us on the road trip today. If you want to come along on the next one, call shotgun by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and we'll make sure we put you in the passenger seat of the next car that we're going to be in. And let me tell you, it's actually going to be quite a fun one. A friend and fan of the channel has reached out and they're going to lend me their quirky electric French car. So stay tuned if you want to see what that is. Again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. All the best.